Hello, this is Aerial Traveler. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to show some ropes in this video that I've used over the years for recreational tree climbing. Some of the ropes down here I've owned for a long time. Some of the ropes I've only owned for a couple months. Yes, it's ARBOR-PLEX. ARBOR-PLEX was the very first rope that I purchased. This is 150 feet, and I mostly used it with a Blake's hitch. And it's overall a pretty awful rope. I don't recommend it. Friends should not let friends use ARBOR-PLEX to climb. This ARBOR-PLEX is 150 feet, and that's 150 feet of disappointment. It did help me discover that I liked tree climbing and that I might be willing to invest in better equipment for tree climbing. And so that leads to the second purchase I made, and that's Tachyon. This orange rope is Tachyon. This is a 200-foot length. There's no sewn eye on this rope or the ARBOR-PLEX. When I first started, I used termination knots. Not until later did I start to use a splice connection. The Tachyon has a real nice hand. It holds knots well. It behaves well. And it is very pleasant rope to use. It's very cushy. It gives you a cushiony ride. I would say it's the softest ride of all the rope that I have here. Tachyon feels a little bit closer to 12 millimeter or half-inch rope than 11 millimeter. I think this is 11.5, but it actually feels bigger than the Poison Ivy rope I'll show you in a second. Tachyon's a great rope. I use this for working now, just due to the high visibility. I do like the color to work with, but not necessarily for recreational tree climbs while you're trying to stay stealthy. The third rope I purchased was Yale Bandit. Yale Bandit is a 11 millimeter rope. This one has a sewn eye here at the end. I do prefer one sewn eye on my ropes. And this is the rope where I discovered that I do prefer at least one spliced connection. Yale Bandit is cheap, it's inexpensive, and it's great rope. This color pattern is kind of hard to find now. They still make it, but it is hard to find. You can find Yale Blaze a lot easier now. Yale Bandit and Yale Blaze just do everything well. This is one of my favorite ropes. It's inexpensive. It works good with SRT and moving rope systems. This rope here is actually retired. I put a lot of mileage on this rope and used it for many years. To this day, it is still my favorite rope that I've ever owned. I would buy it again in a second in this color pattern if I could find it. The fourth rope that I purchased is this Sterling HTP. This is 11 millimeter. This is the Addiction color scheme that was available from one particular arborist supply company. I bought this rope actually from a fellow climber, and I discovered that it is a tough and very durable rope, but it's very wiry. You can see that it holds its shape quite a bit. And for that reason, I discovered I didn't really prefer this rope. It's too hard of a lay for me. It is difficult, or more difficult to knot than, say, the Tachyon or the Bandit, or the ARBOR-PLEX for that matter. I did have a sewn splice put on one end of the rope by Climbing Innovations, and I really did appreciate that when I used one end for a moving rope system. The rope is great, it's tough, it would make a great work rope. It just wasn't my preference. I prefer a softer lay rope. And I actually, unfortunately, I had to buy this rope to discover that I prefer a softer lay rope. This is the fifth rope that I purchased. This is Yale Poison Ivy. It's 11.7 millimeters. It has a very good hand. It's a nice soft hand. It does hold knots well. This particular rope is 150 feet long. There is a hand spliced eye here at one end, and I always used one end of my rope as a moving rope system or a DDRT system. The other end of the rope is used as a canopy anchor most of the time for an SRT system. Yale Poison Ivy is a great rope. I wish I would have purchased this originally as my first rope. It's very, very similar to Yale Bandit. I probably would have a slight preference for the Yale Bandit just because of the weight savings, but I would buy this rope again in a heartbeat. It does everything well. It does SRT well, and it does moving rope systems very well. It's an all-around great rope. One of the other ropes that I use is PMI Easy Bend 9mm. This is 9 millimeters. This is 30 feet. This is an extra long lanyard that I use. It's extremely light. The hand on the 9mm is very nice and very pleasant. It does work well with most 8mm hitch cords. I've used this 9mm for SRT and for moving rope systems, and it works well. This is my #1 lanyard pick. 9mm PMI Easy Bend. Extremely light, extremely durable. It's just a great rope. This is a 10mm PMI Easy Bend. I use this for my 50-foot hook lanyard. This is a great rope. It's much stiffer than the 9mm. The hand is much tougher. I do prefer the 9mm over the 10. The 10 is a little bit heavier, of course. The breaking strength is a little bit higher, and it might be a little more appropriate if you're actually doing work in a tree. I really recommend PMI Easy Bend. It's a great rope. It's tough. It came from the caving industry, I believe. If you had to pick, if I had to pick, I would pick the 9mm. It is my favorite of the two. It makes a great lanyard. Super, super, super light. I wouldn't leave the ground without it. These are my top picks for recreational tree climbing. Yale Bandit or Blaze, excellent starter rope. It does everything well and it's inexpensive. If you want to upgrade a little bit farther than that, the Yale Poison Ivy or Yale 11.7mm ropes are excellent. I highly recommend them. They behave very similar to the Yale Bandit, but they're a little bit thicker, but the price is a little bit more expensive. For a lanyard, I'd recommend a 9mm PMI Easy Bend. I'm using 30 feet here. It is a very nice setup for a lanyard. Extremely light, it holds knots well, it's tough, and it does work for moving rope systems and SRT. Invest in a good rope up front if you're thinking about starting recreational tree climbing. Don't go cheap. If you don't like tree climbing, you can always try to sell the rope.